Hi, and welcome to our presentation on designing quality services, which is chapter 8 of the book Managing Quality, Integrating the Supply Chain by S. Thomas Foster, the 5th edition. We are the members of Group 2 from the course Quality Management, and our group consists of Ms. Joy Greenidge, Ms. Sherry-Ann Ramjit, Ms. Abigail Taylor, Ms. Alicia Woods, and myself, Ms. Esther Vidal, your presenter. During this presentation, I will be covering the following content. I will start with an introduction to the chapter, then I will move on to the differences between services and manufacturing. What do service customers want? ServQual, designing and improving the services transaction, the customer benefits package, service transaction analysis, improving customer service in government, quality in healthcare, supply chain quality in services, a theory for service quality management, and then I will conclude. What is quality service? High service quality will meet or exceed employee and customer expectations whilst remaining economically competitive. Evidence from empirical studies suggests that improved service quality increases profitability and long-term economic competitiveness. In today's economy, customer satisfaction and service quality are leading components in the system of external relations of each organization, as today they largely determine its competitiveness. Figure 8.1 shows the power of satisfied customers. Whether you run your business from home, online, or out of a commercial office, your customers are vital to your success. Loyal customers are those that come back to purchase from your business again. Services are distinguished from manufacturing on several dimensions, each posing unique challenges for the operations function. Manufacturing organizations produce physical, tangible goods that can be stored in inventory before they are needed. Service organizations produce intangible products that cannot be produced ahead of time. However, all services have some tangible aspects as well. The outputs of services are also heterogeneous. This means that for many companies, no two services are exactly the same. One useful distinction between services and manufacturing centers on the aspect of customer contact. Customers tend to be more involved in the production of services than they are in the production of goods. Hospitals, colleges, theaters, and barbershops are just some of the examples of service organizations in which the customer is present during the creation of the service. External services are those whose customers pay the bill. For example, when you purchase an item of clothing from your local clothing shop. Internal services are in-house services such as data processing, printing, and mail. Customer service to internal customers is very important because internal services are usually outsourced. There is an increasing trend in companies to outsource internal services. Voluntary services are those services that we actively seek out and employ of our own accord. Generally, we research a voluntary service and have certain expectations when we engage its services. For example, when we choose to dine at a particular restaurant. The quintessential example of an involuntary service is a prison. Other involuntary services include the police departments, the fire department, the hospitals, and other services that you do not choose to engage willingly. It is generally more difficult to achieve high levels of customer satisfaction in involuntary services. Yet, employees of these service organizations often desire to provide better service to patrons. Certainly, our perceptions and expectations of service quality can be affected by whether the service is voluntary or involuntary. Because service attributes can be intangible, it is sometimes difficult to obtain hard data relating to these services. In manufacturing, dimensions such as height, weight, and width are available for measurement. In manufacturing, repetitive tasks are easily measured and cycle times are generally consistent. When customers are intimately involved in processes, there is much more customization and much more variability than in manufacturing. Thus, it is more difficult to have tangible data associated with services. Product liability issues in services are very different from manufacturing as well. For both manufacturing and service firms, the customer is the core of the business, and customer needs provide the major input to design. By focusing on the customer, many manufacturers and service firms have come to view themselves as service providers. So, what do service customer wants? There are 5 key ones of customers. The first is tangibility. Since services are tangible, customers derive their perception of service quality by comparing the tangible things associated with these services provided. It is the appearance of the physical facilities, the equipment, the personnel, and communication materials. Reliability. Reliability is the ability to perform the promised service dependably and accurately. Reliability means that a company delivers on its promises. Promises about delivery, service provision, problem resolution, and pricing. The third is responsiveness. This is the willingness to help customers and provide prompt service. This dimension emphasizes attentiveness and promptness in dealing with customers' requests, questions, complaints, and problems. Responsiveness is communicated to customers by the length of time they have to wait for assistance, answers to questions, or attention to problems. Responsiveness also captures the notion of flexibility and ability to customize the service to customer needs. Assurance. This means to inspire trust and confidence. Assurance is defined as employees' knowledge of courtesy and the ability of the firm and its employees to inspire trust and confidence. This dimension is particularly important for services. Lastly, customers want empathy. Empathy means to provide caring, individualized attention to customers. In some countries, it is essential to provide individual attention to show to the customer that the company does best to satisfy his or her needs. Now that we have identified what customers want, let us look at one way to assess if our service meets customers' perceptions. One way of assessing this is through the SurfQual survey. This is a tool that is used to assess customers' expectations and perceptions, and is used to identify the gaps between their expectation and perception of a company's service. This tool looks at the 5 dimensions or customer wants mentioned before. The expectation survey, which is the first part of the SurfQual survey, asks 22 questions that test the standard that customers require from services in general. The survey uses a scale of 1 to 7, where 7 represents that the customer strongly agrees with the statement and 1 is where they strongly disagree with the statement. This therefore makes 4 the neutral answer. The perception survey, which is the second component of the SurfQual survey, asks the same questions as the expectation survey, but makes it more specific to the company. The scale is the same for the perception survey as it is for the expectation survey. After you have completed the SurfQual survey, you can now perform your gap analysis. The gap analysis allows you to realize the difference in perceptions of the service offered. The first gap is the difference between what management perceive customers expect and what customers actually expect. Sometimes what a business thinks a customer wants is not what the customer wants. Sometimes the specifications of what quality should be and what managers expect of service quality is also different. This is the second gap and shows that what managers expect is different from what is specified in order to give quality service. The third gap shows how far the actual service is from the specifications that were defined, while the fourth shows the difference between what was promised or told to the customer and what was actually delivered. This is the difference between your service and what you communicated to the customer that you would do or give to them. The final gap, or the fifth gap, shows how different the expected service of a customer is to what they actually perceive the service to be. In order to determine how big the gap is between expected and perceived service, you can use two types of differentiating techniques. The first is SurfQual differentiating. This is done by tallying all the responses of each question, and it is advised to do at least 50 surveys. The mean is found for each question, and then each question is grouped into their respective dimensions, as we mentioned before: tangibles, empathy, responsiveness, etc. The mean of each dimension is then found for both the perception and the expectation survey, and the difference between the two is calculated. The dimension with the lowest score is the dimension or the dimensions that need most attention. The second differentiating technique, which is the SurfQual two-dimensional differentiating, is used when the variation between dimensions is big, when the gap is really huge. The result is converted into a differentiating plane, so you do the same calculations as you would do with the SurfQual differentiating. And when you find your means, all of that is converted into the differentiating plane, which is similar to a graph, where the expectations fall on your vertical axis and the perceptions on your horizontal axis. The scale is plotted 1 to 7 and the lines intersect at 4. The mean scores are then plotted on the plane, and the dimensions that fall in the high expectations but low perception segment are the areas that need to be addressed. Since you have now identified the areas that you need to focus on, here are 3 ways to improve your customer's perception. The first is known as services blueprinting, and this is a flowchart of all the processes in a service, and it highlights the fail points as well. In order to do a proper services blueprint, you need to follow 4 key steps. First, you need to identify all the processes and construct your flowchart. Be careful not to miss out any step in your process. The second is to isolate the fail points. These are parts of the process that can go wrong. For example, the process for selling a customer a burger. One fail point is that you take the wrong order. This can result in the customer not getting the burger they want, and you now have a dissatisfied customer. The third step is to establish a time frame. Each step in the process takes a particular amount of time to complete, whether it be 10 seconds to take an order or 15 minutes to prepare the burger. This will allow you to determine the exact amount of time needed for the entire process, and therefore customer satisfaction can be achieved. The fourth and final step is to analyze your profit. The more fail points that actually occur in the process means less profit for the business, because it means that the process takes more time to happen and maybe even less or no money you may receive from the customer. The second strategy that can be used to improve customers' perception is moments of truth. Each fail point is a moment of truth because it means that the customer can either be lost or saved. Whatever contact a customer has with your business, whether it be face to face, via email, or phone, you are able to gain a customer or lose one. So you must put measures in place to ensure that at every encounter, only a positive outcome is perceived. The third and final way is by using the Japanese method of poka-yoke, also known as fail-safe. This method uses the three T's so that for each fail point, a fail-safe is built in to prevent anything from going wrong. So, you isolate the fail points in all the tasks that you have to perform for your customers, in the treatment that you provide to your customers, and in the tangible things that you also provide for your customers, and create fail safes for each of them. An example of this is when you use the ATM machine and it prevents you from inserting your card if you push it in the wrong way. So, for every process in your organization, you isolate the fail point and create an appropriate fail safe for it. A customer benefits package, or CBP, consists of both tangible and intangible items. The tangible items defines your service or what goods you give, while intangible makes up your service or what service you give. CBPs are important not only in that they help define what it is that your service firm will provide to the customer, but also in helping to define what will not be provided to the customer. They also provide a foundation for developing a service strategy. The four stages of the service benefit package, or your CBP design, describes the process from start to finish. It defines the service or product offerings to the customer. It serves as a guideline for employees when selling the product or service. It also provides a marketing and communication channel to reach your customers. The four stages of the CBP design process are as follows. First, you have your idea or your concept is generated. Then, you define what you are going to give or what service package you're going to give to your customers. Then, you define your process and you select what process you are going to use throughout your service provision. And then, what facilities you require to give your customers as well. The objectives of each CBP design must be as follows. You must make sure that the final CBP attributes are the correct one. You must evaluate how important each attribute is in the minds of your customers. You must also evaluate each attribute in terms of your process and how your service will be received by customers. You must also figure out how best to segment your market and position your CBP in each market. You must avoid duplication and proliferation of your CBP, and you must bring each CBP and its associated process and service encounters to the market as quickly as possible. And finally, your final objective is to maximize customer satisfaction and profits. Deborah Kellogg and Winter Nye provided a service process or service package matrix whereby firms will offer different service packages, whether it be unique, selective, restricted, or generic. Generic service packages are of the one-size-fits-all variety. Unique service packages are especially tailored for each customer. Your firm's ability to custom tailor a benefits package depends on the amount of flexibility you have as a service provider. Strategic issues such as the flexibility of your organization, the skills of your top management, how motivated your employees are, training, your hiring practices, the culture of your customer, the nature of the service that you provide, and your technology all affect your ability to provide unique services. Service transaction analysis is a service improvement technique that allows managers to analyze their service processes at a very detailed level. Service transaction analysis, or STA, is a method for identifying these transactions and evaluating them from the customer's perspective to determine if there is a gap between the design of your service and what the customers perceive as the service that you are offering. A STA sheet is a tool in STA. Once you have specified the service process to be studied, mysterious shoppers or independent consultant customers walk through the entire process. After receiving the service, they then rate each transaction in the process with either a plus, which means delighting, a 0, which means satisfactory, or a minus, which means unsatisfactory. The rationales for each of these scores are entered into the right side of the sheet, and an overall evaluation is provided at the bottom of the sheet. Using these sheets, service designers, managers, and staff can attempt to understand why the customer did not like certain aspects of the service and use this as an input into improving the process. Improving customer service in government. Although the federal government seems to be lagging behind the private sector in terms of its quality management practices, the government is in fact making sterling efforts to better serve its customers by implementing strategies whose factors seem to be responsible for enabling the driving force of change towards adopting quality techniques. This includes the growth of improved employee satisfaction, which is associated with quality management. The drive for change seems to be influenced by the following factors. 1. Government leaders mandating standards, strategic plans, and new levels of performance at all levels of government. 2. A major impetus for improvement is being based on the fact that quality management is associated with improved employee satisfaction. 3. People wanting and desiring to do good quality work. And 4. Feedback and reporting are inciting improvement. Customer service is not just for the private sector anymore. The possibility exists that within time, the federal government can bypass the private sector by extending better quality customer service throughout its local, state, and federal agencies and the citizens they serve. Quality in healthcare. Quality in healthcare is becoming more and more popular in the United States and in many places around the world. However, quality healthcare is difficult to achieve in its entirety because of the varied and complex nature of the citizenry who needs healthcare. Quality in healthcare can be achieved across the board, but only when people become insistent about adopting and maintaining a quality healthcare attitude by practicing and remembering important pointers such as quality matters. Quality can be measured and improved by participating in and making decisions about one's health. Do not be wary of asking questions. It is the only way one can become aware of and understand one's medical problem. Edify oneself. Carry out internet searches, use the library, ask doctors and nurses about your medical concerns. Ask pharmacists about your prescriptions and its side effects, and allow quality healthcare to begin with you. Supply chain quality in services. Supply chains are quite easy to define for manufacturing organizations, where each participant in the chain receives inputs from a set of suppliers, processes those inputs, and delivers them to a distinct set of customers. With service organizations, one of the primary suppliers of process inputs is customers themselves, who provides their bodies, minds, belongings, or information as inputs to the service process. So it makes it a little more difficult to define the supply chain. We refer to this concept of customers being suppliers as customer-supplier duality, As shown in the figure, the duality implies that service supply chains are bidirectional, which is that production flows in both directions. A theory for service quality management. The theory of service quality management is very important to any organization. If properly understood and applied, the organization would be able to better understand the customer and in return be very successful. This theory is said to have four propositions. At number one, we have the unified services theory. This proposition highlights the customer's input in the production process. Therefore, instead of the customer just buying the product, as in the case of a manufacturing organization, the customer gets to influence the end service. Then we have the unreliable supplier dilemma. In this proposition, the customer is allowed to be both the customer and the supplier. Therefore, they are called customer supplier in this case. For example, if the service business is an automobile shop, the customer has to supply the material for the servicing, and they also receive a service in return via the actual fixing of the car. This proposition is very risky as it controls the quality of the service, cost, and timing of the service. Hence the name unreliable supplier dilemma. Capricious labor is the proposition that focuses on the customer's reaction to technology. Yes, technology is good and could be very efficient or effective, but with services, its effectiveness is dependent on the customer. Some customers are not willing to use technology, but rather do things the old way. For example, a bank may give customers the option, of using their online banking service. However, some customers may not use the service due to ignorance. The everyone presumes to be an expert proposition shows how the customer in a service-related business contributes to the process specification and product design. The customer generally says what to make and how to make it. In the end, all these propositions are present in the world today. A manager should have knowledge of these propositions so as to safeguard against inefficiency in the provision of services. To conclude, this chapter was very enlightening as it showed that it is just as important to design a service as it is to design a product. Some of the end results are quality service, happy customers, profit, and positive growth. The comparison between the manufacturing sector and the services sector gave a clear picture of the importance of quality in service design. We would like to give credit to all the places where we got our information from. And this brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you very much, and we hope that it was informative for you.